well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. Today we're going to be talking about an infringement on the right to keep and bear arms. Charges filed against Mark and Patricia McCloskey in St. Louis, Missouri. Felony charges, unlawful use of a weapon. Could be looking at several years in prison, although prosecutor Kim Gardner says, no, I don't want to do that. I'm so fair. I'm so fair and judicial-minded that she is offering the McCloskeys the opportunity for pretrial diversion. They can even expunge this off of their record as long as they bend the knee and admit their guilt in defending their home and their lives against hundreds of protesters that have burst through a gate and making their way through their private neighborhood. We'll talk with Marina Medvin about this, senior columnist at Town Hall, a trial attorney, coming up in just a matter of minutes. But before we get to that, I want you to hear from Missouri's Attorney General Eric Schmitt, who on his Twitter account on Monday night, shortly after the charges were filed, posted a video explaining why his office is going to be intervening, or at least attempting to intervene, in the McCloskey case. Take a look.
Hello, I'm Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmitt. The right to keep and bear arms is given the highest level protection in the Missouri Constitution and our laws, which I'm charged with protecting. This includes the Missouri Castle Doctrine, which provides broad rights to Missourians to protect and defend their personal safety and property against those who wish to do them harm. And yet, in the wake of radical calls to defund the police, and with rates of violent crime skyrocketing each day, the St. Louis Circuit Attorney filed suit against a St. Louis couple who, according to published reports, say they were doing just that, defending the safety of their family and their private property. Enough is enough. As Missouri's chief law enforcement officer, I simply will not stand by while Missouri law is being ignored. That's why I'm entering this case and seeking the dismissal of this case to protect the rights of Missourians to defend themselves and their property under Missouri's Castle Doctrine. A political prosecution such as this one would have a chilling effect on Missourians exercising their right to self-defense. The law in Missouri is clear and must be protected. We're in the middle of a crisis of violence in our major cities here in Missouri, including in St. Louis. My office is committed to working with law enforcement, state and federal partners, and community leaders to protect our communities, combat violence, and defend our citizens. We should focus our attention on that, not these kinds of divisive decisions not based on the law. May God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Missouri.
All right, so with that as the backdrop, let's bring in Marina Medvin, again, senior columnist at townhall.com, trial attorney as well, to get her thoughts on the charges facing the McCloskeys, as well as the prospect that this actually ends before a trial ever begins. Take a look and a listen. Marina, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's great talking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So there have been a lot of developments just in the last 12 or so hours after news broke that the McCloskeys are facing felony charges, unlawful use of a weapon filed by St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner. You now have the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, Eric Schmitt, weighing in, saying he wants to intervene in this case and get these charges dismissed. Governor Brad Parson on Sean Hannity's program last night asked, will you pardon this couple if it comes to it? And he said, absolutely. So, I mean, I got to ask, Marina, I mean, as an attorney yourself, first of all, what do you think about the fact that this case was even filed by Kim Gardner?
Oh, it boils my blood. It is ridiculous. It's an atrocious abuse of power. Everything I'm seeing out of that office, it's a George Soros-funded prosecutorial political activist committee. That's really what it is. It's not really a prosecutor's office. This isn't about justice or fairness. It's about politics for them. And that's really what we're seeing across the country, and it's playing out in Missouri in front of all of us. But we're seeing the politicization of the criminal justice system. It's something we've never seen in this country before. And even in Kim Gardner's statement, right, she puts out a statement saying that these two individuals, the McCloskeys, were illegally waving weapons in a threatening manner, and that the protesters were not violent, peaceful, unarmed. So she's creating a defense for these protesters who broke the law, trespassed after breaking a very nice fence, by the way, on private property, threaten the lives of this family and their pets. And all of that is irrelevant to her because it's not about justice, it's about politics.
Yeah.
And at the end of...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting to me, at the end of her statement, she makes a comment. She says, the people have elected me to pursue equal justice under the law. Equal justice. Not justice, equal justice. What's equal justice? How is that different from justice? What does that mean? It's a political term, right? It's a leftist term to mean basically like an affirmative action version of the justice system, where some people get off because historically they have been wronged by the justice system, and some people get prosecuted because historically others who look like them would get off. It's politics.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, to me, if we're talking about equal justice, all right, well, then let's start with trespassing charges for those protesters. That doesn't seem to have happened. And there are some inconvenient facts for Kim Gardner here. As you say, this was a private neighborhood. This was a private street. The McCloskeys never left their own property either. But ultimately, does this case come down to whether or not the McCloskeys had a reasonable fear for their personal safety, for the safety of their property at a time in which, there had been riots in St. Louis. There had been deaths. David Dorn, retired police captain there in St. Louis, was murdered at a pawn shop that was being looted. The very next day after the McCloskeys incident, you had peaceful protesters who were praying at a statue of St. Louis downtown, and they were assaulted by individuals. I mean, it does not seem unreasonable to me, Marina, that the McCloskeys may very well have been in fear of their life, as you say, when that gate was broken down, when hundreds of protesters begin, pouring through their private neighborhood. They're yelling at the McCloskeys. The McCloskeys say that they heard, threats directed to them, including, I believe, in fact, I think Mark McCloskey said that one individual held up 2 ammunition magazines, kind of clacked them together, and he viewed that as a threat. It seems like this is going to be a very, very difficult bar for Kim Gardner to actually pass and obtain a conviction in this case.
Well, of course it is. I mean, everything you're saying is 100% correct. And this comes down to seeing this incident not as a two-dimensional photo or 10 seconds in time in a video someone saw on Twitter, right? You have to take this in context of what's been happening, right? Life is continuity. And it's causation. It's seeing everything as a whole and weighing all the factors together. For this couple, this wasn't just a moment where there's a bunch of people and they immediately reach to their guns. It wasn't that simple, right? This is following, as you said, weeks of turmoil, destruction, attacks, both on property and on people. And when this mob broke through, and by the way, the psychology of a mob or people seeing a mob, even if every person in the mob is not saying to the family that we're going to kill you, as long as one person from there makes those threats and what the McCloskeys see as a mob as a whole, they are allowed to attribute that to the mob as a whole. When you're in a mob, you take on the mind of a mob. And when it comes to people defending themselves, they're defending themselves from the mob, not from one or two individuals in the mob that they're going to take out, isolate, and evaluate on an individual level. That's just not how it works. So if you want to participate in mob activity, if you want to break the law as a mob, you're going to get the consequences of people responding to those attacks by the mob. You don't get to isolate yourself and say, well, I am not the one who threatened them. I'm not the one who said I'm going to kill you or kill your dog. You don't get that opportunity. The McCloskeys responded to the mob as a whole, as one body, because individuals in the mob threatened them. But not only that, every single person in the mob broke the law when they broke through the gate and trespassed onto the private property of this family. Anyway, moving back, these McCloskeys are seeing everything play out. Aside from everything they've known that's been happening to their cities and around the country as a whole, they've also seen police not respond. And when they themselves called the police, they were denied protection. No one came. No one's there to help them. What are they going to do? Is there a law on the books that says, when you call 911 and nobody shows up, here's how you're going to respond. Number 1, subsection A. No, there's no such thing in the book, okay? You get to decide how to protect yourself in that moment. And they made a decision to get firearms because their lives were threatened. Right? They didn't just out of nowhere pop out these guns and say, let's play Wild Wild West. Right? They came to this decision after evaluating the situation carefully and after being denied protection by law enforcement. And they came to that decision after they were threatened by the mob. All right. And so the question of did the McCloskeys have a reasonable belief that they were in imminent danger of death or serious physical injury? Yes, absolutely. From their perspective, absolutely. That's not really arguable at that point, considering where they were and what they were doing. Now, sure, a prosecutor could try and make those arguments, but is that her job? Is her job to advocate the least possible position that a jury can come to at the end? No. Her job is to be reasonable and just. Right? And then it goes down to, well, what the hell is equal justice? Is that political justice, right? What is equal justice?
I guess we're going to find out here. It's interesting to me, too, because Gardner is charging them with a felony, but says, she wants to put them in a program where they could, a diversion program, basically, where they could avoid jail time. So at the moment, it seems like, she's, and tell me if I'm off base here, but it seems to me like she's kind of dangling the possibility of, listen, maybe you plead guilty to reduced charges, plead guilty to a misdemeanor, you'll avoid jail time, you'll do some community service. I get to walk away with a win. You get to keep your law license. You get to keep your concealed carry license. But at the same time, you've got the attorney general trying to intervene. You've got the governor who says, I'm going to pardon these individuals if they do get convicted. I mean, it seems to me like this is a fairly low-risk opportunity for the McCloskeys to actually take this to trial and defend themselves in court.
I don't even think he'll get to that, honestly. Eric Schmitt, he put out a statement saying, as AG, I'm entering the case seeking a dismissal and defend all Missourians' right to protect their lives and property. That's what he tweeted. And he put out a video to the same effect. It sounds to me like the Attorney General, which is if you think about a pyramid of prosecution, he's going to be that tippy top right there at the state level. He's coming into the case saying that a local prosecutor is improperly prosecuting, that this is a malicious prosecution, which, by the way, is criminal in most states. I'm not sure about Missouri, but he's coming in and saying that this is a political prosecution, meaning it's motivated by factors other than justice. Right? And he's seeking a dismissal. I'm not sure it's going to get anywhere past the initial hearing where they're going to move to dismiss if he indeed enters his appearance. It sounds like he doesn't want it to go to trial. He doesn't want the McCloskeys to have to deal with that.
All right. So when might that happen? I mean, the initial hearing, I'm guessing, would be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So we could see this case go away fairly quickly, it sounds like.
It sounds like from what the politicians on top in the state of Missouri are saying, that's what it sounds like. We've had obviously no guarantees.
Yeah.
But that's what it sounds like. I also do hope that Josh Hawley's request to William Barr is honored. Josh Hawley put out a beautiful letter saying the Second Amendment is not a second-class right, that the Department of Justice must ensure that all Americans' rights are protected from this kind of abuse of power. And he talks about the troubling abuse of power and the troubling political motivation of the St. Louis Circuit Attorney. He says that she has not seen fit to prosecute many violent offenders, but yet prosecutes these gun owners. Why? Because that's her political motivation. She's previously expressed hostility towards gun rights, and now she has an opportunity to prosecute someone, and she's jumping on it. And she just recently received a contribution from George Soros. Not from anyone else but George Soros. It was sometime early June 11th. He gave over $77,000 to her reelection.
Wow. And
in 2016, it sounds like he contributed more than $200,000 into that race back in 2016 as that was going forward.
Okay.
And the question is, who's she serving? Is she serving the people of St. Louis, or is she serving George Soros? What type of communications does she have with George Soros and those committees? What are they telling her to do? Are they saying that these contributions are contingent on something? Does anyone have these answers?
It's a great question. Maybe a brave member of the St. Louis Press Corps will ask that question or two before the primary coming up here in August, which, because of St. Louis politics, is ultimately the de facto general election. I don't think there's a Republican who's going to win that seat. So you got several Democrats that are squaring off, including Kim Gardner, who's running for re-election. And we've seen Soros, as you say, donate back in 2016, donated even more money. He has really tried to very quietly reshape the criminal justice system. He has, given millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to district attorneys around the country. Here in the state of Virginia, where I live, we saw this in the last election cycle. I think Loudoun County up in Northern Virginia, the Commonwealth's attorney was backed by George Soros to the tune of, tens of thousands of dollars. And with that, again, you see this far left ideology take root, where justice isn't blind, but she's lifting up the blindfold and she's peeking at each and every one of these cases, right?
I don't know what they're doing or how they're organized, other than everything I'm seeing from these George Soros politically funded candidates is basically a politicization of criminal justice. This is the only way to describe it. And we've never seen it in this country before, right? So George Soros found this loophole. He found an opportunity to get into the suburbs and to the cities and to all the areas where previously politicians have not really touched. Because realistically, if you compare the amount of money that goes into these local races with how much he's contributing, normally it's maybe a tenth of the amount that we're seeing played out. People will have 150,000 total contributions to their campaigns for local prosecutors. George Soros, for example, put in $1 million. And we saw that in Arlington, Virginia. And what happens with that money? It's used for commercials, and it's used for branding and advertising and a variety of other political ad campaigns, Facebook campaigns, etc. And what's happening is people are learning only about one candidate. The opposing candidates don't have the funds to educate the public in the same manner. And people are just seeing one single candidate. They're not seeing responses. They're not seeing enough from local media of unmasking of these candidates. Well, is this money coming from? Why all of a sudden are you hearing and learning about prosecutors, where in the past, 10 years ago, you would never hear anything about prosecutor races. People normally didn't hear it. You would just select the lawyer that was most qualified for the job. It wasn't about politics. But now we're basically what we had before. We had judges acting like politicians on the bench, and we never liked that. Well, now we're seeing that in prosecutors. Now we're seeing politically motivated prosecutions or politically motivated decisions not to prosecute, right? Because Kim Gardner, for example, made the decision not to prosecute anyone who was looting stores. So that's strange. Why aren't you pursuing charges against those rioting or looting? Why? Why would you do that? And instead, she describes people who are trespassing, committing a crime, as peaceful, unarmed, nonviolent, because that type of crime is acceptable to her. She finds it okay. She finds it lovely, right? Something she's personally endorsing. But if it's politically opposed to her party or something she doesn't like the Second Amendment and the McCloskeys, now she's throwing down the hammer. That's it. These people, felons.
Yeah. And in a way, I almost hope that this case does actually go to trial, because I have a feeling that the McCloskey's defense would basically, take the offense to Kim Gardner. And here, you want to know why we were in fear of our lives? Well, here's what your office failed to do, during the weeks before these protesters busted down this gate and came into our private neighborhood. Again, don't know that it'll get to that point, but we do live in very interesting times. And Marina, last question for you. How concerned are you that this isn't going to be a one-off in St. Louis, that other, far-left prosecutors, politically motivated prosecutors, are going to take whatever opportunity that they can to go after law-abiding citizens who are protecting themselves, their families, and their property?
I think we're going to see rewards for Kim Gardner from the left. We're going to see these super PACs or like the Justice and Public Safety PAC from George Soros. We have them all over the country. We're going to see rewards. And as soon as the other prosecutors see the rewards of this politically motivated persecution, it's not a prosecution, it's a persecution, okay? So once they see the rewards, the political rewards of this persecution, they're going to follow suit. So are we going to see more across the country? Absolutely. Just like we're going to see more persecution of police officers, right? I expect that to happen all over the country.
Again, Marina Medvin joining us, Town Hall senior columnist, trial attorney as well. Marina, listen, I really appreciate your time today, as well as your insight. Hope we can have you back again in the very near future.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Well, I appreciate Marina joining us on the program. We will keep our eyes on this over the next few weeks. There's a part of me, look, this is so political, and Marina got that absolutely right. This is not about seeking justice. This is about playing politics here. And so if you look at this through a political lens, after Kim Gardner has her primary election in early August, let's say she wins, but wins or loses, after that primary is over, then I think Kim Gardner, might be able to let this one go. On the other hand, and by the way, and I expect, by the way, that she would try to drag this out past the primary, despite the attempt to intervene by the Attorney General there in Missouri, Eric Schmitt. From the perspective of conservatives, the McCloskeys have been embraced by the Trump campaign. They were part of a online campaign event last Friday. It makes some sense for this to be a live issue on through November, but even if this case were to be dismissed, if the intervention of the Attorney General were to be accepted and this case goes away, I think it's fair to say that the McCloskeys are likely going to stick around as part of the cultural zeitgeist in the months to come, as an example of, listen, this is what could happen to you, legal gun owner, if Joe Biden is elected. If anti-gun Democrats take control of the Senate, if they remain in control of the House, if they take over some governorships, if they take over as prosecutor where you live, the attack on the right to keep and bear arms won't just come in the form of gun bans and magazine bans and red flag laws and universal background checks and things of that nature, but you could actually be prosecuted for defending yourself and your property. And that is a message that I think is going to resonate with a lot of Americans. Saw a story before we get to our hero of the day, or our armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. I did see a story posted at Bearing Arms this morning up in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, which is Pittsburgh area. If you want to apply for your concealed carry license, you've got to do so via appointment only. The sheriff's office is doing this by appointment to try to keep the traffic down and a coronavirus related restriction. They're processing about 84 permits a day. They're having applications come in about every 5 minutes. And they are still so far behind right now that they're currently taking interviews for November. Yeah, they've got a backlog of about 6,000 people who are waiting to apply for their concealed carry license. They can't, because the sheriff doesn't have the manpower. The office hours are limited because of those coronavirus concerns. And so there is a growing backlog around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I wouldn't consider Pittsburgh to be a particularly pro or anti-gun part of the country compared to, let's say, Texas or West Virginia. I think it's probably more pro-Second Amendment than New York or New Jersey. But I don't think it's necessarily one of the country's strongest Second Amendment strongholds. Maybe a little bit to the south, Washington County, PA. That's a Second Amendment stronghold. But I don't think that this is particularly unusual. I think that the demand that we're seeing, the weights might be unusual, but the demand for those concealed carry licenses is not. Americans in record numbers are not only purchasing firearms, but they are seeking to bear those arms that they are keeping now as well. And I don't think that's going to change between now and Election Day. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of speculation about what these new gun owners, what kind of impact they could play in the 2020 election. And I think with cases like the McCloskeys gaining national prominence, that makes in turn it more likely that these new gun owners are going to vote to protect their Second Amendment rights, their newly exercised Second Amendment rights, come Election Day. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. We will start there. The story out of Salem, Oregon. A man is being held without bail after a police officer was injured in a shooting. This is a crazy story. According to the Statesman Journal, Suspect in this case just pulled up alongside a car in which 3 undercover officers were in and then just opened fire. 27-year-old Alejandro Maciel Salcedo arraigned on Monday on charges of 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 3 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, 1 count of first-degree assault, and illegal possession of a firearm by a felon. That's right, Mr. Maciel Salcedo not legally allowed to possess that firearm that he allegedly used to shoot at officers, which kind of raises the question, all right, so if he wasn't allowed to possess the firearm, this 27-year-old man, why? Why wasn't he allowed to possess this firearm? As it turns out, the Statesman Journal says just last year, Maciel Salcedo was convicted of first-degree burglary, unlawful use of a weapon, menacing, and fourth-degree assault. And he was sentenced to 3 years probation. That's right. And 90 days in jail. Yeah. Since that time last year, he has been found to have violated his probation multiple times without consequence at all. Now, Maciel Salcedo, allegedly shot at police officers, has committed a crime large enough to make the headlines, large enough to be withheld without bond, but again, should not have been out on the street to begin with. He's a convicted felon who violated the terms of his probation, and nothing happened. So is it inconceivable that Maciel Salcedo believed that perhaps he would get away with this crime too? No, it's not inconceivable. He was wrong, apparently, but not inconceivable. When there are no consequences, when consequences are not swift and certain, criminals, not unsurprisingly, get the idea that they can get away with their crimes. And I can't help but wonder if that was, this wasn't an example of that there in Salem, Oregon. Today's armed citizen story from Metairie, Louisiana, where a man walked into a convenience store, actually threatened a convenience store clerk outside of the convenience store, before walking in with a machete, grabbing some beer from the cooler, then threatening the convenience store clerk once again. This happened early Friday morning in Metairie. There was a customer inside the convenience store who was a concealed carry holder, drew his firearm when the machete-wielding man confronted the convenience store clerk for the second time. And the man put down the beer, said, listen, I'll leave. Just give me back my machete and I'll leave. And amazingly enough, that's exactly what the convenience store clerk did. Gave him his machete and the guy walks out the door. But when he did so, he left his wallet behind. Yeah, I know. 37-year-old Robert Merritt then allegedly returned to the store just a few minutes later, as police were there, talking to the convenience store clerk. They ended up trying to take Mr. Merritt into custody. He resisted. So now he's facing aggravated assault charges as well as resisting arrest charges. He was taken to the Metairie, to the Jefferson Parish jail, where he was held on a $1,000 bond, which isn't a lot of money, by the way, but for a bond. Briefly held on that $1,000 bond. Released later the same day because of concerns over crowding at the jail. Didn't have to pay a dime. Yeah. So 37-year-old Robert Merritt, I guess this could be a recidivist report as well. I don't know if he's got a previous criminal history, but certainly a little minor slap on the wrist there. And go on, we'll see you in court here in a few months for 37-year-old Robert Merritt. Hopefully, that convenience store clerk maybe going to become a gun owner himself so he doesn't have to rely on the kindness of armed strangers. Glad, again, that this defensive gun use did not result in a trigger being pulled. Nobody was hurt. The presence of that legally owned firearm was enough to convince Mr. Merritt to leave once he had his machete again. It was apparently his utter stupidity that brought him back to the scene of the alleged crime. And finally today, our good deed of the day from Syracuse, New York, actually Cicero, New York. An off-duty Syracuse police officer saving 2 dogs from a burning home there in the New York town. I like this story, I have to say. Any story in which, especially because we had that kind of depressing story the other day about the dog that had to get put down because it attacked the woman, right? Yeah, I like the stories where dogs get saved instead of stories where attacking dogs get put down. Syracuse police officer Jim Nowodowski. I'm going to try that. I'm going to just try that a second time. Jim Nowodowski. I think that's better. Nowodowski. On his way to work on Thursday afternoon, when he saw heavy smoke and flames coming from the rear of a home there in Cicero, New York, he stopped and he heard dogs barking inside. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon Thursday. Tried several times to see if anybody was inside the home, but when no one answered, he then entered and started searching the residence. That's where he found the 2 dogs. No humans inside, but Nowodorsky was able to rescue both of the pooches. State Police, Cicero Police, Onondaga County Sheriff's deputies, Brewerton, Central Square, Clay, Conanoy, Cicero, South Bay, West Monroe volunteer firefighters all responding to the scene of this blaze. They were able to quickly contain the fire to the garage area. No one injured in the fire. It does remain under investigation. The dogs are okay. The residents are okay. Nowodorsky is okay. I like that. That's a happy ending. So in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Syracuse police officer Jim Nowodorsky. Sorry, officer, if I completely butchered your last name, but I do certainly appreciate your very good deed. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I appreciate you being a part of the program. Hey, listen, coming up on Wednesday, we've got a special time for our live chat. Going to be talking with Hot Air's Ed Morrissey for our VIP Gold members at 12:30 Eastern. That, again, is a live chat. You direct the conversation. You'll have the opportunity to chime in with questions, comments for Ed and myself. It'll last about an hour or so. If you can't get there live, we will have this available on demand as a replay for you. And we certainly do appreciate all of the support of our VIP Gold subscribers. In fact, if you sign up now using the promo code LOYALTY, I believe you get a nice, healthy discount off of your VIP Gold membership. It'll give you access to exclusive commentary, analysis, things like these live chats throughout the Town Hall family of websites. So bearingarms.com, hotair.com, Red State, Twitchy, PJ Media, and, of course, townhall.com as well. I think I might have missed Red State, but I'll throw Red State in there as well. So there really is a great opportunity to support some of your favorite writers and your journalists, and we certainly do appreciate all of the support here at Bearing Arms. In the meantime, you can subscribe to this particular show a couple of different ways. At YouTube, you can subscribe to Town Hall Media, or on Apple Podcasts or the other fine podcast platforms. Just look for Bearing Arms Cam & Company. We will be back tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information. In fact, scheduled to talk with Culpeper County Sheriff Scott Jenkins, who's taken the first steps towards ensuring a proposed gun and magazine ban in the state of Virginia does not impact residents of Culpeper County. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Be well, be safe, be free. We'll see you soon with more Bearing Arms Cam & Company.